Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Johnny Harris video. He uploaded this today. Ooh, sponsor, guys. I'm sure he's gonna have a sponsor break. Use the slash Johnny Harris. All right. He's giving us this great content. If anyone's gonna react to his videos, I think we should just make sure to push anyone that views this. Please help him out. I mean, he's an amazing channel. All right. He's gonna do amazing. He already has this many. He used to be on Vox, and which is kind of like Vice News, and whoever you feel about them politically, they make the best news documentaries ever, going into very dangerous places, putting their lives on the line, talking to those channels. I love them for their quality, and I love Johnny Harris. Preemptive like, original link to the video, top of the description. Below that, link to the Discord. Would love to have you. Just click on the link, and if you have Discord downloaded, it will send you right there. Make sure to press the verify button. Let's do it. I'm in a new scenery because my room upstairs is kind of under some construction, putting in AC units and insulation. But this spot's starting to grow on me. Let's go. Good audio.
The world you live in today was sketched on paper by European men who looked like me. Men who at first were just curious and adventurous, but soon whose motives morphed into an insatiable greed, a confidence that their way was better than everyone else's. This confidence led to arguably the most influential series of events in human history. At least the history that affects you and me. A 500-year project
exploration
of moving people and weapons and germs and language and violence to every corner of our earth. And in the process, gathering and taking home stuff to make them richer. Metal, rubber, tea, sugar, and human bodies. This isn't a history lesson. You won't hear me talk a lot. Human bodies. This isn't
Europe before Constantinople fell, 1450. Lithuania. Lithuania had its own empire?
isn't a history lesson. You won't hear me talk a lot about dates and names. Instead, this is the first of 3 videos where I want to show you how this happened. How Europe, a continent full of poor, miserable farmers, took over the entire world. And in the process, they shaped it. They shaped it.
Can I give a, just please let me give my hypothesis of why, and this is why. I believe Europe went on to conquer the world, to dominate the world militarily and therefore economically. This is my opinion. I believe that other I always think, like, how did China not conquer the entire world? They've been developed nations for a long time. There's India, there's the Persians, yeah. But like, the reason I think that it was mainly European powers is that I think places like China or India have everything they need, pretty much. They have a ton of fertile land. They really know how to grow rice. They have that secret of silk, even though I have no idea how that stayed a secret, even when they were making silk stuff with silkworms in India. But I think the same reason, like the Japan in World War I, before World War I, World War I, and up to World War II, during World War II, is I see them as like an Asian UK, as like they're not on the mainland, they're separated a little bit, and they don't have a lot of resources. Europe as a whole doesn't have a lot of resources and spices and silks and a lot of big commodities they want. And so when they were cut off by the Ottomans from this area, they were forced to develop really good sea technology, boats, and therefore naval warfare, to go get what they wanted, and no one else in the world really had to do that, or either weren't powerful enough to do that, or just had what they needed. And I think the lack of resources and coveted goods in Europe and the UK led to a lot of this. That's my theory. Let's see.
To their way of thinking and speaking and doing things. So this is part one of how Europe stole the world.
There's 3 parts to this. Yes.
I am out here on a bit of an excursion near the sea, but I want to pause this video because I need to tell you about the sponsor of today's video, which is BetterHelp, a company that is trying to help you improve your mental health. I'm a giant fan of therapy.
Wow, this is a big thing I care about too. Make sure to use the /Johnny.
I've trying to help you improve your mental health. I'm a giant fan of therapy. I've said it before, I will continue to say it. I think therapy is way underutilized in our society. We all have mental health issues, whether we like it or not, whether they're diagnosed or not. And BetterHelp.
I want to continue this, but this is a big thing about me too, is that what bothers me a lot as someone who's had a lot of mental doctors, like psychiatrists and therapists and whatnot, is that why is it that if you never see a get your physical for like 3 years, people freak out and think you're like, what, are you stupid? And I understand that you could have some physical problems that could destroy your life, perhaps kill you more quickly than a mental issue would. And so maybe you do need a few more physical than mental checkups. But at least like every 2 years, why don't we see mental health as something that needs to be checked as often as physical health, or almost as? So why not? Why is it that we have to wait for people to have mental breakdowns and finally get over the stigma because it gets so bad to ask for help? And why can't it be? That's never a thing with physical stuff. You never have to be like, oh my God, I'm so afraid of the stigma of people think I'm going to a physical physician and they might not do it as quickly for mental thing. But I think mental checkups should be either as common or at least every other year, and should be pushed at a young age, just like going to the doctor. There should be a pediatrician for psychiatrists that oh, your psychiatric appointment is this year. We need to stop the stigma of you're going to be a weird psycho loser if you go see a therapist and then suffer in agony mentally until finally you forget that it conquer it. You either sometimes, unfortunately, end it. And I say that a lot, like the people who have suffered mental illness the worst and depression the worst in the world, guess what? They're all dead by their own hand. And so everyone else, in today's world that is super depressed, I'm not even at that level, but we need to recognize that this is something to be seen as more important, way more important.
BetterHelp is trying to make therapy, which is just working through the things in your mind, more accessible. And I'm a giant supporter of that mission. I've been in therapy for several years. It has changed the way that I think. It has changed the way that I approach my relationships. It has changed me. I can say that unambiguously and very genuinely. What BetterHelp is a platform to make therapy more accessible to people, anyone around the whole world. It's not bound by geography. So instead of looking for a therapist like in your local town, you go on to BetterHelp, you sign up, you take a very short quiz, and they match you with somebody in their huge network of like tens of thousands of therapists. Once you're matched, you can start communicating with a therapist in as little as like 48 hours, which if you've ever looked for a therapist before, That is very, very quick. That is very easy. And that's what BetterHelp's trying to do, is just use technology to make therapy more accessible. I'm a big fan of that. You can choose how you do your therapy. You can do it over the phone. You can do it over video call. You could even do it over like messaging if you don't want to talk. BetterHelp is not like a self-help program. It's not a crisis line. It's legitimate therapy that is done securely on the internet. This is why over 3 million people are on the BetterHelp platform, taking control of their mental health. So if you want to get in on this, try BetterHelp out. There is a link in my description. It is betterhelp.com/JohnnyHarris. Clicking that link helps support this channel, but it also gives you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can try it out. BetterHelp is already really affordable. There's even financial aid for those who need it. Thank you, BetterHelp, for supporting my channel, for supporting this video, and for making therapy more accessible. Okay, now back to this incredibly...
I want to say one more thing before he gets back to it. I want you guys to know that depression, mental health, I've had it pretty bad, not as bad as, not to like a bad of like thinking event, like, but it is awful. I would not wish it on my worst enemy. And I want you guys to know, even if you don't want to stay on the Discord, you can leave it after. But if you, I can't be the personal therapist for 50 people a day who message me. I'm not talking about just like, you know, you broke up with your girlfriend, or even though that can be pretty debilitating. Like if you are, yeah, forget that. Even if it is breaking up with your girlfriend, that can be very tough, and was one of the big leads, I think, into one of my greater depressions that developed. But you please join the Discord. You can DM me. You don't even have to be friends with me on Discord to talk to me. But I have some experience with mental health and therapists. And if you're feeling like this, you can talk to me. You don't just willy-nilly, you know, whatever. But if you have serious anxiety, depression, I've been through some of that, and please, I would be glad to talk to you about it in DMs on Discord. I'd be happy to. So yeah, let's continue.
Important story on how Europe stole the world.
Seafaring technology?
Yes, I'm going to be looking at a lot of maps to understand this issue, because drawing on the map is how they did things.
That's perfect. I love maps.
To understand how Europe stole the world, we need to rewind to back when the map looked a little different. Hold on.
I love old maps.
Back in like 1450, the world map looked like this. I mean, Europe was just a bunch of smaller kingdoms.
I didn't see the map. 1450. What's going on in 1450 besides right before the fall of Constantinople? 1450. 1450, I don't know. Isn't like the siege of Vienna around this time? 1450, 1450. I don't really know what's happening in 1450.
I mean, Europe was just
exploration, age of exploration about to start.
Just a bunch of smaller kingdoms. The borders look so different than they do today. They were all pretty small potatoes. Well, actually, there actually were no potatoes. Those wouldn't arrive to Europe for another 50 years. But the fact is, there wasn't an abundance of anything in Europe. Instead, Europeans were just farmers barely scraping by, constantly in debt to a few rich landlords. Life in Europe was scarce and miserable. Meanwhile, there was a bunch of other empires around the world that were thriving. There was this big empire over in the Middle East. They had silk, and then over here in India, you had a big empire with spices and luxurious cotton fabrics. Then, of course, there was the big dynasty in China that had by this time already invented gunpowder, porcelain, and really sophisticated ships that they could use to sail around the world. Oh, and all of these...
Pretty sure a big turning point was when the Ottomans started being middlemen or cutting off Europe. Either being middlemen and charging insane prices to Europe, or just stop them completely, and so they had no other choice but to search around Africa and whatnot.
These empires were trading with one another, making all of them even richer. They all had better everything than Europe did, and miserable Europeans eventually wanted in on all the trade. So that's kind of the context here that sets the stage for Europe taking over the world. The first two countries that wanted in on all this trade and set out to explore were the countries that today we know as Spain and Portugal. So they start looking for a land route to get them east. They start moving east and nope. Oh look, it's the Ottoman Empire, a very powerful Middle Eastern empire that's run by Muslims. Meanwhile, Spain and Portugal are hella Catholic and they're not being super nice to Muslims or Jews. So the Ottomans are like, no, we're not gonna let you pass through our land to get in on the trade.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if they were being middlemen as the Ottomans, inflating prices insanely, or cutting off completely. That answers my question.
In the East. Oh, and by the way, you can't even afford our taxes. You're miserable Europeans without a lot of money, so go away. They're gonna need another way to go east.
Africa.
Portugal's workaround was literally to go around the continent of Africa, stopping along the coast to trade with the wealthy African empires along the way. This is a huge moment because it actually worked. It's near the end of the 1400s, and the Portuguese are now going nuts. They're sending ships around this route that they figured out, trading with the East. And suddenly the Portuguese are dressing in luxurious fabrics. They're using cloves and cinnamon and black pepper to make their food actually taste good. Wait a minute, you're telling me they didn't have black pepper before this? Jeez,
they had to have salt.
Indeed. You must have some peppers. So the age of exploration has begun. Miserable Europe is doing something about their situation, going out to get in on the thriving trade in the East. But remember, this isn't about conquering land, it's about trading. For now. Okay, so now Spain sees Portugal hitting the jackpot, and they're kind of jealous.
Is this where Magellan or Magellan who gets killed in the Philippines?
They want in on this too.
Vasco.
They need to establish their own trade route to Asia, but they wanted to do things a little bit differently. Instead of following Portugal's lead and going around
Columbus?
Africa, they listened to a pitch from this Italian sailor. And this sailor wants them to fund his new startup called What If We Sailed West to Get to Asia instead of East? Super promising name. Now remember, at this point, people in Europe thought that the world looked like this. The logic was like, oh, we can just hop over to Asia by going this other way. So Spain was like, yes, great idea.
That's so smart. How did they do that? I mean, look, the Arabian Peninsula is pretty spot on. Iberian Peninsula, pretty good. Great Britain, not bad. Scandinavia looks like islands. Turkey, pretty good. Did they think India was an island here? I mean, that's pretty good. How do you do that? So do they just like get out a giant measuring tape, or do they just like sail at a certain speed? Somehow they tell what speed they're going and then go along a coast and see how far it takes them past certain curves and then mark those curves and repeat?
We can just hop over to Asia by going this other way. So Spain was like, yes, great idea, high risk, high return, do it, Columbus.
Mayflower.
Well, it turns out the world does not look like this, and instead, over...
Wait, no, not the Mayflower. Never mind. I'm stupid.
Does not look like this, and instead, over here, there are a couple of massive continents that Columbus ran into. But like many of us confident white dudes, Columbus was like, yeah, I know exactly where I am. We're like in the Indies right now. Like over those guys over there, those are Indians. Yep, I can feel it. But instead he was like in Cuba. But despite the mansplaining, Columbus kind of found exactly what he was looking for and more. Great empires with rich culture and food and precious metal that weren't available to him back home. He was right on target. So he's like, all right guys, let's trade. But then he's like, wait a minute.
But he was really nice to them, right?
People don't have armies or navies protecting their stuff. So this must be kind of a different place. different land with different rules. And this is where the biggest light bulb moment of the century goes off in this guy's head.
I am not.
Change of plans, boys, says Columbus. We're going to claim this land. And everyone was like, wait, what? You heard me. We are claiming this land. And the boys are like, wait, weren't we here to like trade with great empires? Portugal's been doing this for like all these years and getting rich. And he's like, no, they don't have armies. They're just letting us show up and like be here without a fight. So obviously that means they don't mind if we just like claim the land. I mean, I'm taking some creative liberty here on like explaining what Columbus was thinking, but like, look at the letter that he wrote. Here's the letter that Columbus wrote back to the king and queen, reporting on what he saw. He writes back saying that he discovered many islands inhabited by numerous peoples, and then I took possession of them for our most fortunate king, making public proclamation and unfurling his standard, his flag, with no one making any resistance. No one making any resistance. Spain and Portugal set out to trade. They sent out to like explore and understand and get in on the global economy.
What did he mean by that?
No one making any resistance.
Is that like a diss or something? Is that like a 15th century diss of like they didn't even resist, or like they were such a bad army? Or is that a lie?
Spain and Portugal set out to trade. They sent out to like explore and understand and get in on the global economy. But Columbus's realization was instead of trading, they could actually just claim land for themselves. And this changed everything. After all, no one was making any resistance. This moment is the foundation upon which all European imperialism grows. I'll show you. It's the moment that would give us the first big division in the minds of Europeans, the thing we wrote on paper, the old world versus the new world. This is really familiar language to us now.
I don't get it, because Portugal and Spain decided on a line that went like right down here, or like here, kind of like where the sea is in America, like South America. And it seemed like Spain or Portugal only got like this slice, but now Brazil is like all of this.
Would give us the first big division in the minds of Europeans, the thing we wrote on paper, the old world versus the new world. This is really familiar language to us now, but it was invented in this moment. The new world was now seen as land that could be claimed. It was fair game to go conquer because they didn't have big armies or a Christian king. Forget trade with the East, said Columbus. There's a bunch of land that we can go take over in the West. And the race was on.
I don't want to be that guy, but guys, isn't this what every freaking European at the time would do? It's like conquer instead of trade. Wouldn't they have done that with well, they do that with India. But if India didn't have any formidable colonies, don't you think they would have done the same thing Columbus is doing?
And the race was on. Spain and Portugal didn't want to fight with each other over all this land, this conquest that they were about to undertake. So they got together,
split it,
drew some lines.
And Portugal really got
they
the
just
short
drew
end.
2 straight lines. We have Africa, we have Europe, and then we have this line. Everything left of this line is Spain's. Everything to the right is Portugal. This is literally one of the original maps where they...
So did they think that like the land in North and South America wasn't that big, and so Portugal agreed on this little sliver? Because it really seems like Spain got the good side of the bargain.
Everything to the right is Portugal. This is literally one of the original maps where they actually drew these straight lines and divided the world into 2. But let's look at this on a nicer looking map, please. There we go. Now we can see very clearly. Oh look, now we understand why they speak Portuguese in Brazil. So Spain and Portugal now have their spheres of the world that they can go conquer. They didn't ask anyone, they didn't negotiate with the locals, they just...
I thought it was just the New World. They were talking about everything that wasn't exactly conquered.
That they can go conquer. They didn't ask anyone, they didn't negotiate with the locals, they just drew these straight lines. The Pope actually helped them broker the deal. Classic. But again, this is a huge thing that I want to explain in this series, that these were not just lines. They weren't just like lines on paper. They were actually a shift in the paradigm, a new way of thinking about the world. No one making any resistance. It was a story that Europeans could now tell themselves. Old world versus new world. Claimed versus unclaimed. A new way of thinking. Think I'm being overly simplistic about this? Let me show you something. 1, 2, 3,
Maps.
4. These were a juicy find. I found this amazing Portuguese nautical atlas. It's a bunch of maps that the Portuguese Navy drafted up right after these two lines.
Look how damn good that is, guys. They must have sailed along the coast, like knowing their speed. Don't they have this speed way of knowing their speed by like trailing a rope behind them and seeing how fast the rope drifts away or something? But so would they note the speed as they travel and then note a curve and then mark that length, that speed to cover that, and then so on and so on and so on until they can roughly, and it's like, okay, down south, and then we're going around here like 200 miles. It starts to go back north at a degree.
It's a bunch of maps that the Portuguese Navy drafted up right after these two lines divided the world between Spain and Portugal. And it is an amazing series of maps, but not only because it's visually stunning, but also because it lets us into the mind of how the Portuguese saw the world after they divided it with Spain. This atlas reads like a storybook. It's like the Portuguese were so giddy about giving themselves permission to steal half the world that they had to write a children's story about it. That's what it feels like. That's not what it is. But just look at this. Here's the title page. You can see that at the center is the sphere that was given to Portuguese. Brazil, Africa, what is now the East Indies.
Where's Australia?
And here on every corner, you see these angels that are blowing wind into the sails of the Portuguese who are out on their land grab mission.
That's what those mean.
So this is just the title page. The subsequent pages of this atlas are close-ups on different regions. This is the Caribbean over here, look. This will become Cuba, this will become Haiti, Dominican Republic,
Hispaniola.
North America, South America. All of this unclaimed, up for grabs. Here, our story depicts all these flags. Some of them are Spanish flags on the islands on their side of the line, but then you have Portuguese flags on the Portuguese side of the line. The status of this land, according to the fantasy of the Portuguese, changing from unclaimed to claimed by men on ships with Christian crosses on their sails, showing up and planting flags. This was like playing a board game to them.
Isn't that what why is the Age of Exploration singled out as like the evil time of rulers? Isn't this what every single empire in history did? They saw a weak part of the land, they subjugated them, often killed them, disease and whatnot, or assimilated. And why are we acting like the Age of Exploration was like the evil time in history? And it's like, how is this just not ongoing wars against an enemy that can't stand up to you? And it's as if the enemy is so much weaker than you, and you still conquer them. Then that's seen as bad or something. But I don't understand how the conquering of the world would have not have been done by any other culture around the world who had the means to do it and the lack of resources that these people had. And so I hate sort of like just name calling. Oh, this is what humans do when they have power and no resources. They conquer, they kill, they take over, they subjugate, they call it their own. And I understand how Europeans going to war against a lesser enemy is so different than every other point in history.
Here's another page. This one's a close-up.
Except the scale. Of course, the scale is bigger. It's the world. A lot of it.
Brazil.
But like, I hate how we're acting like this was a specific evil breed of humans that never existed. It's like, no, this is humans who now have the means to do bad things for greed. Let's stop acting like any one people in the world are more prone to carrying out atrocities. No, people do it. Let's stop thinking about Europe, Asia, Africa, and just, this is what humans do. Worst parts about us, sometimes the best parts, and we do evil things.
And look, we've got people over here. We've got dark-skinned, naked people with primitive tools and no homes. It looks like down here in Brazil, they spend their days chopping wood naked and dancing, all while being gazed upon by fantastical birds and dragons? This was an official naval atlas.
I love the way he said that. Dragons?
Drafted for the king. And if its message wasn't clear enough on how these people should be depicted, the atlas has a little info box up here where they say that the Brazilians are, quote, savage and very brutal. This is one of the first atlases ever made, and it wasn't really a navigation tool. It was much more a declaration of a new way of seeing the world. Unclaimed territory, subhuman people, all of it up for grabs by Christian boats. So yeah, this is how it all started. Under this new paradigm, both empires expanded very quickly, forcing the Spanish and Portuguese languages across the ocean, mining vast quantities of silver, creating plantations for tobacco and sugar, and in the process massacring.
Yeah, the superiority complex and the white man's burden is psychotic and insane and evil, and you have to be a complete psycho to think that.
The people who were living in this new world, both with their weapons, but also with their European city germs that the people being conquered didn't have immunity to. I mean, this whole thing started with curiosity, with a thirst to get in on the trade in Asia. But soon, as this fantasy of unclaimed land came into the picture, the goal shifted, the project pivoted, and soon Europe was telling themselves a new story, that they, enlightened Christians, were entitled to claim it. And while this story starts with
white man's burden, there's an old cartoon in like the 1800s, 1900s. It's called The White Man's Burden, of like, it shows a picture of like a white guy in cartoon carrying extremely racist depictions of other cultures up a hill. And it's like their duty to go around and conquer and civilize all people, which takes a special breed of psycho.
Spain and Portugal, soon it spread. Other European countries poked their head up from their farm work and said, hey, we're white Christians also. We know how to sail. We want in on this story of unclaimed land. And that's the next chapter of the story, one that I will tell you in the next part of the series.
If they just like if they change from unclaimed land to land occupied by people with resources we want to conquer, I feel like it'd be similar to a lot of stuff. Great video, guys. Please, if you could answer my questions, I swear they are sincere. And I can't wait for number 2. He uploaded this today, so I'll be doing it tomorrow. Love you guys. Hope you're doing well. If not, chin up. You will be good soon. Trust me. Don't worry. Bye, guys.